What's up everyone? James here again, and today we're going to be talking about the Atari 2600. Now, I didn't actually have this system growing up, but apparently my mother-in-law did, and my wife remembers playing it quite a bit when she was younger. So she's been wanting me to get one for a little while now, and since this month was her birthday, I thought it'd be a nice surprise to track one down. So I shopped around a little bit, came across a couple of good deals on Craigslist, but there was actually an auction on eBay that caught my attention. When I found it, there was only 2 hours left on it, and the price was still pretty low. They were selling 2 Atari 2600s, the joystick controllers, the paddle controllers, 43 games, as well as some original manuals. However, there was a catch. This was a Goodwill auction, so I know it was a bit of a gamble, but I figured at least one of the consoles has to work. So I'd actually never bid on eBay before, so this is my first time. I placed a bid, honestly kind of forgot about it, and 2 hours later, I received an email saying that I won. A couple days later, the package arrived, and I was really eager to test everything out. And unfortunately, neither one of those systems worked. So trying to be optimistic, I figured if the games worked, it was still a good deal because the games alone were pretty much worth twice than what I paid for everything. So here's the 2 consoles I got in the auction. As you see, both of them are the 6-switch models. So considering neither one worked, I went ahead and opened both of them up just to see what they look like on the inside. This one here I'm pretty sure was submerged in water at some point in time. Pretty much everything metal inside of it was rusted. I wasn't even able to look at the motherboard considering how rusted the screws were. Unfortunately, this one is pretty much unsalvageable. However, this one was in really good shape when it arrived. Even the inside of it looked perfectly fine. It was really clean. There was no rust. Even the motherboard looked pretty much spotless in my opinion. So I'm not entirely sure what's wrong with this one. After playing around with this one for a little while, I was eventually able to get some sort of response. The TV does acknowledge a signal when you turn it on, but it's like for a split second. So for now, I'm pretty much going to hold on to it as a decorative piece and possibly a future project to see if maybe I can fix it or find someone who can fix it for me. So I went back to eBay and found a guaranteed to work Atari for a pretty good price. So as you can see here, this is actually the 4-switch model. Pretty much all they did was move the difficulty switches to the back. And once it arrived, I was finally able to test out all the games, and thankfully all but 2 of them worked. Overall, I still walked away with a pretty good deal compared to if I actually went out and bought everything separately. Like I said, bidding on a Goodwill auction is a gamble. Nothing is ever guaranteed to work. However, it can pay off in your favor, so just be careful with it, do some research, and make sure what you're bidding on is actually worth it. Now let's talk about some of the games. So 43 games were included, 2 of them didn't work, and there were a couple of duplicates. However, in the end, I came out with a total of 30 different games. Now we're not going to talk about all the games, but there are quite a few I do want to go over. But first up, we're going to kind of go through some of the games that I'm sure most people are familiar with. So first up we have Pac-Man. From what I read, compared to the arcade version, this game wasn't very well received by critics. Granted, it's not the best version of Pac-Man out there, but I feel like it gets the job done. Even with the limitations of the hardware, I feel like they could have done a bit more with it. But I still had fun with it, and it's definitely a worthy game for your Atari collection. Next up we have Dig Dug. I don't have too much to say about this one. I know it was ported to several different consoles, so I don't know how it compares to the other systems, but I did have fun with it, and I'm definitely glad to add it to my collection. Next we have Donkey Kong. So I'm sure everyone out there has played this at least once. Another game that's obviously nowhere near as good as the arcade, but it's still fun. My only real complaint is occasionally I did have trouble climbing ladders. That and Donkey Kong looks a bit more like the Gingerbread Man than a gorilla. Next up we have Frogger. I don't really have too much to say about this one either. It's been a long time since I played Frogger, so I don't know how it compares to other versions, but I still had fun with it, and it's another must-have for your collection. Next up we have Asteroids. I remember playing this one all the time on an old PC my parents had when I was a kid. I felt the controls were a bit weird with the joystick, but I think that's due to originally playing it on a keyboard for so long. But still, another fun game that I'm glad to add to my collection. Next we have Space Invaders. I do remember playing this in arcades as a kid. Honestly though, I did find this version to be a bit more difficult, but then again it's been a long time since I played the game, so I don't have much to compare it to. Pitfall was one I was really excited about. I've always liked this game. It's simple but fun and addicting. Pitfall 2 was also included, however that game was unfortunately one of the 2 that didn't work, which was a bit of a letdown, but still it's definitely one of my favorites on the system. Missile Command was another one I used to play on the PC when I was a kid. I was never a huge fan of this game, but I did play it every now and then. It just doesn't really interest me too much. It seems easy at first, but it does quickly get challenging. It's not one I'll probably play often, but it does bring back a lot of memories from when I was a kid. So the rest of these games I actually wasn't familiar with. First up we have Atlantis. I thought this one was okay. You basically control 3 cannons and try to defend off enemy attacks. It was fun for a little while, but not one I could play for an extended period of time, but still worth checking out. Next we have Air-Sea Battle. I felt this one was similar to Atlantis, but the game has several variations such as shooting down aircrafts using a stationary gun, controlling a submarine and taking out ships, and even a shooting gallery where you target ducks, rabbits, and clowns for some reason. Next up we have Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. I'm not gonna lie, I really suck at this one, but essentially you fly around and try to defeat Imperial walkers. I didn't get too far into this one, but from what I played, it does seem pretty cool. Next we have Adventure. So I like this game even though you basically control a square. However, like Star Wars, I apparently suck at this one too. Once I come across one of the dragons and they start following me, it's pretty much the end. But still a fun game in my opinion, and worth checking out. Next up we have Haunted House. So I assume you're roaming around inside of a haunted house. It's kind of weird because all you can see of your character is the eyes. Eventually you'll come across ghosts and some other enemies. I'm not entirely sure what the goal of the game is, but it's definitely one I'll be checking out again. Next we have Venture. So this one took me a minute to figure out, but I assume your purpose is to collect a treasure from each room you encounter. It's not as easy as it looks, but once I figured out that I could actually shoot some of the enemies, the game became a bit more enjoyable. Definitely another one I'll be playing again. Next up we have Joust. There's not a whole lot to say about this one as well. You fly around on an emu or an ostrich, I guess, defeating enemies by, for the most part, landing on their heads. Another game I totally suck at, but still pretty cool to have. Next we have Keystone KAPERS. I actually had a lot of fun with this one. You play a security guard or a cop, I assume, basically trying to catch a fleeing criminal before they escape. Not a whole lot to say about this one as well, but definitely one I do recommend. So last up we have Cosmic Arc. This was another one I had a lot of fun with. You take control of a UFO and begin by fighting off meteors, I assume. After that, you're taken to another screen where you get to abduct some sort of creatures. I don't know why, but I did find this one very addicting, and it's definitely one I do recommend. So that was just a quick overview of what I got in the auction. I'm glad I took a chance on it. It was definitely worth it. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, like the video, comment below, and if you want to keep up with future videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you guys again.